you to start off by talking about growing up and your family and how that led to the work that you do.
Well, I didn't know it until I was an adult, but I came actually from a large union family, a lot of educators, railroad workers union, things like that. But the union wasn't really talked about a lot in the household. And so, and you know, we grew up, I was just like probably every New Mexican, pretty poor. And so I started working when I was just a kid. I think I was 12 when I got my first job. And I was bucking hay on the farm for several years.
Where's the farm?
Down the South Valley. A lot of it doesn't exist anymore, but that Walmart and that giant shopping center down there on Rio Bravo and Isleta used to be, or on Coors, used to be all farm, all alfalfa fields, but now it's all buildings.
Was that your family's farm?
No, it was a friend of the family.
Okay.
The whole neighborhood worked there. A bunch of us kids all worked there.
Okay.
And so
What'd you do?
we just bucked hay. We loaded trailers, loaded the barn, which is good because it exposed me to hard work early on, you know. And so I've always been a worker my entire life, mostly out of necessity, you know, I guess. But it becomes a passion, you know. It became a lifestyle, of course. But then I started, once I moved out of home, I was, you know, when I was 18 or 17 actually, I got a job in fast food. And I became a manager. I moved up quickly. I worked in fast food for about a decade. And
Like where?
I was at Quiznos. Quiznos, remember that? We don't have them anymore. I don't know where they went.
I do remember those.
We lost the one in the airport too, man. Anyway, and I moved on from there and went to Rudy's Barbecue. Also became a manager there. And after that, I got into bar management. I took the restaurant management and went to Billy's Long Bar, who also owns Horse and Angel Tavern, Billy's Long Bar, and Stoneface Tavern. So I was a manager for him for another five or 6 years, and I worked at all three of his locations. And that's when I realized that I was just treading water. You know, I didn't have insurance my entire life. So here I was, 30 years old, no insurance, no retirement, no plan, except just work till I die. And I had reached my maximum pay at that job as a manager of like $13 at the time. Couldn't live, and I just decided enough was enough. And I recently had a friend who had got a factory job. It was a non-union, but it was a factory job where he was making a way better wage than we were, and he actually worked at the bar with me. And so I followed his lead and kind of looked for a factory job. I found a union factory where I got hired on, and so that's how I got into the state. And that's Bimbo Bakeries. That's where I currently work.
Okay,
And
so
that's how I
tell me about Bimbo Bakeries.
Bimbo is a superpower. They're a group out of Mexico. The parent company is Grupo Bimbo out of Mexico. They are a literal superpower. They've bought out Sara Lee, Earth Grains, Ballpark. Entenmann's, Barcel. I mean, they're huge. Anyway, they have, I think, 78 plants across the world, something like that. So, and it's a real good job. Largely, I'm convinced because of the union contract that we have, but it is a good job. I had, the first time in my life I had insurance. You know, there's no more vitamin C and Tiger Balm. You know, I actually could go to the doctor, and that was huge. Made a living wage. For the first time I could afford the bills, you know. So man, it just changed my entire life. It really did.
So what is the union?
The union is BCTGM. It's the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco, and Grain Millers.
What's your local?
Local 351. And we cover, Local 351 covers the entire state of New Mexico. And we have members all the way down in Cruces, all the way up to Farmington, across the entire state. And we also have other employers too besides Bimbo in the local. Smith's Food and Drug. We have all the bakery departments in almost every store. We have 22 shops, Smith's shops. And we also have Albertsons Bakers. We have Market Street Bakers in Santa Fe. So it sounds like a lot, but we're still pretty small local. We're just spread out is all.
And are there factories in all of these locations, or?
The Bimbo is the factory, local, and then the rest is retail bakers. So we have two separate industries there. But it is all, in New Mexico, we're all bakers, decorators, baking industry. Whereas some locals in other states have cereal, grain, flour, sugar, aside from the bakers. So, but in New Mexico, we're pretty much just bakers all across. So far, we have a lot of aspirations, but to organize.
Like what?
For example, right now, in fact, what I was just doing in there is researching. We have our eyes set on the General Mills factory, the cereal plant.
Is that still here?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
It is, and
Okay.
it's about 200 workers. It would be a huge boost for us, and from what I hear, they need a union. So
Did they ever have a union? Do you know?
locally, I don't believe so. No, it's been a non-union plant, I think, since it's been around. But many General Mills plants are represented by BCTGM across the. That's why it's such a hot target for us, because it just fits. We have the General Mills that we do represent. We have the best contract in any General Mills ever. So that's what we're doing. We have aspirations, and that would expand us out of the baking industry, kind of more into the grain milling side, which would be nice to grow and see this local get bigger.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's go back to your job. What were you
Sure.
doing at the factory?
Well, I still work there, but
Okay, okay.
I operate a dough mixer. So if we make ballpark, Sara Lee, so I literally mix the dough for all the bread for the entire state, and some surrounding states. We feed the children, we feed the prisoners, we ship to Arizona, Colorado. So if every time you eat a ballpark hot dog or a hamburger bun, I made that dough. So that's really cool. And when I can go out to
Give me
eat
a sense
and see,
of scale on this. I'm just curious when you say that, because I mean somehow when I'm eating a hot dog and a hot dog bun, it's like the small thing
very
in
small.
front of me, but like the whole idea.
the
of
entire dough is about the size of a pickup truck, probably. A small pickup. Very, very, 1,000-pound, 1-ton dough. The machine that I operate is like one of those giant cement mixers that you see driving around, except it's stationary and without the vehicle part of it. But that big spinner is pretty much what my machine looks like. It's as big as my living room. It's huge.
and like, do you make one of those for a period of time, or like, what's the time?
I probably make 30 doughs a day, a shift, in an 8-hour shift. And that, again, one dough is thousands of units of individual buns, So it's a lot. It's, it's commercial. It's obvious it's a factory. It's commercialized. So yeah, it's a big dough. A lot of fun too. You learn the science of the baking, and it actually does become a passion, or for me it did. And so, where I used to just say I was a factory worker, and now I say I'm a baker, and so it's nice. It's nice to understand the science behind it.
So you make 30 of those a day, and then what happens next? What happens with that dough?
It's assembly line setup, so when I'm done with it, when it comes out of my machine, I send it to the next work area, where it gets cut up into little dough balls and shaped into whatever we're making, hot dog, hamburger, or loaves of bread. But then it gets shaped at the next department or at the next area.
By hand?
No, we have a giant machine called a divider. It's called a dough divider, and it literally divides it into little balls, and then there's 4 little tracks that become, so it turns into 4 little dough balls coming down the line, and they fall into a pan, and the pan goes into the oven and comes out buns. It's a really cool process. And we're in Albuquerque. The Bimbo plant is still it's still largely human ran. It's not so automated. A lot of them are automated, and 20 to 50 people run the whole factory. Over here, we have over 100 people running that factory. So we're still one of the few left that's still operated by humans. which is very nice, you know. So it's a very interesting process, very laborious. It's hard work, long hours, but great job, great benefits. The union has done very well for these workers over the years. Had I not found this, I don't know where I would be. Probably not doing very well. So, whoever had it before me definitely took care of it. This is my first term, you know, as the principal officer, but thank God for the ones before me.
Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Andrew? I mean, how did you come to do that work with the union in terms of your first term as president?
You know, when I first got involved, I just was kind of curious as to what it was. I wanted to see where my money was going, where the dues were going. And I saw some posted in the factory about a meeting. So I went, naturally. And from day one, I was hooked. Just to hear him talk, the former president, you know, to hear him speak to us and the passion that he had about the workers' rights and defending those rights. You know, I've never had rights as a worker. And so I didn't know that was a real thing. and
Who was the president?
that was Earl Reed.
Okay.
And I think he ran it for 12 or 15 years prior. And so I immediately was on board and slowly worked my way up. I became a shop steward for Bimbo. I was elected vice president, and I served under Earl for 3 years, I believe, as vice president. And he knew he was on his way out. He knew he was retiring, so he started grooming me. He saw my potential and my interests, and he took me under his wing and sent me to tons of trainings and just groomed me and packed my head full of union labor knowledge.
Okay. What kind of training, Andrew, would you go?
You know, there's this school called the Grace Carroll Rocky Mountain Labor School. So there's 3 years worth of curriculum, but the class is only a week at a time every year. And every year it's in one of the different Rocky Mountain states. It moves around. So I went, my local elected me to go 3 years in a row and cover all of the curriculum. And they cover everything from labor history to labor law to shop steward, internal organizing, external organizing. I got a little bit of everything out of that class. And then once elected as president, the international union also does their own training, so I went to that as well. So the year before I took office, the last year of Earl's term, I must have been in class, I mean, just the entire time. And my local supported me. They elected me. They must have also saw something, and they chose me. And so I did. I learned as much as I could, and I ran for Earl's office when he retired, and I did run opposed. It was a good election, but I did win.
Okay.
And here I am.
So, in terms of, I just want to take you back for a minute when you were the shop steward.
Sure.
What kind of responsibilities did you have as the shop steward at the factory? I mean, what kinds of things?
You know, the shop steward is probably one of the least appreciated yet most important positions.
Okay, so talk about that.
You know, primarily your goal is to enforce the contract in the shop, because most of the time the union officers are in the union hall. They don't know if the contract is being violated, if it's not, unless somebody tells them, and that somebody is usually a shop steward. But they're the front line. They're the first go-to, you know, that the workers can access immediately inside the shop, so that you don't feel, you know, oftentimes if you don't see the steward or the officer, you feel like you're alone, and you forget that the union is there. And so having a shop steward in-house that you could go to right on the line, it makes a big difference, you know. So, you know, you enforce the contract, look out for violations. You also enforce wine garden rights. And you're if someone does invoke their wine garden rights, you're the person they come and get.
Can you talk about wine garden rights?
Wine garden is the right to union representation during any investigatory situation. And, you know, we never encourage any one-on-ones. We discourage that at all costs. We always tell people either if the company initiates it, invoke your wine garden rights and get a shop steward to represent you, And if you initiate it, we tell them to bring somebody with you. Bring a union brother or sister or a steward or whoever's available. And so that's another a huge role of the shop steward. Enforce the wine garden. Make sure, educate the members on it. Make sure they all know they have that right.
Are there jobs that are in the factory that are dangerous?
I think almost every job, just being in there is probably dangerous. It's an old building. I think it was from the 50s, maybe 40s or 50s. So, it's properly maintained. I believe anything we catch, we notify them. But that doesn't mean, accidents do happen. And the machinery is so big, like I was saying, one dough is, 1 ton. And so, it's a very dangerous job. We do, that was another part of the shop steward is we look after safety, of course, make sure that we're all wearing our PPE, make sure that the company's supplying it and enforcing it. The shop steward, and the thing about the shop steward is they or at least in our local, there's no compensation for that. That's why they're the most important, and like the least appreciated, but so it's hard to be a steward, but it also proves that you're ready to, move up in the union, and if you can be a steward for free, then you can definitely be considered for a salaried position or something like that,
When you were going to the Grace Carroll Rocky Mountain Labor School, can you remember something from that learning experience that you learned that mattered to you?
Immediately. The first day I showed up, the first time I went, it's a little intimidating. There's a lot of people you don't know, and from every age, from every industry, it's from all walks of life. But the first thing I remember was the solidarity. These people, you meet them for the first time and you're immediately friends. You're immediately brothers and sisters. And especially from the same local, you meet people, or from the same international union, and the bond for some reason seems thicker, when someone's, like you meet a fellow BCTGM member and you've never met this person ever, but you immediately are just linked. And I took home friends that I still talk to this day from those classes. But the solidarity I think I didn't realize, you say solidarity and a lot of people aren't sure what that means or just how deep that really can go. And that's what I learned, I think, the most of out there is how important that is. Does it mean we have to hang out after work or take windy walks together? It just, but that's probably the most important thing. In fact, that's what keeps the union alive, And obviously, I knew a little bit about solidarity and whatnot just from being around the local, but then getting around 100 people who are so dedicated, and I learned what solidarity really meant while I was there. It was really great. So that's the biggest thing I learned, the first thing. And I'd never experienced that on such a large scale, and especially with so much passion. And it was nice. In fact, without that school, I might not have made it this far. That school really lit a fire. I still can't put it out.
Okay, so Vice President, so how long have you been the president?
1 year.
1 year, okay.
January of 2018 was my first term, or my first year.
Uh-huh.
This is my second year of my first term.
Okay.
It's a 3-year term.
Okay. Are you involved with negotiating the contract at all?
Yes.
Okay. Are you coming up to that, or?
Actually, yes. Right now, we're getting ready to negotiate with Smith's and Albertsons and Market Street all this year. Yeah. And we just ratified a 5-year deal with Bimbo last year. Took it all the way. We were on the verge of a strike. We had a vote. We even took collective action in the factory where we all wore a strike shirt one day. And that was the most powerful thing I've ever seen in my life.
What's a strike shirt? What's it look like?
We've got them in there. It's a red shirt, bright red, has the local on the front, and on the back it has a snake, and it says, "We'll strike if provoked," with a little rattlesnake. It's powerful. And we got, there's out of 100 bakers or so, over 100 bakers there, I think we had like three-quarters people wore a shirt on one day, 75 people. And I mean, we got a contract 2 days after that. Powerful. Anyway, so we're negotiating. We just ratified that with Bimbo. We're getting ready to negotiate with Smiths.
And then how long are those contracts? Are they 5-year contracts also?
Bimbo, this is the first time we've ever done a 5. They've always been 3. This time it was a 5. Smiths and Albertsons and Market Street are all 4-year contracts.
Okay. How is it working with those grocery stores?
Difficult.
I mean, yeah, so tell me about that, because just get a sense of it about negotiating in this time in the grocery industry.
It's extremely difficult. Part of that, aside from the companies, just their concern is always the bottom line. Of course, that's how they've got to where they're at. So that's right off the bat, you go in with the cards stacked against you, because they have from day one millions of ideas of how to cut cost, which means cut benefits. Essentially. So it's very difficult. And in the thing with the retail side versus the factory side is the factory, we have 100 people in the same place at the same time. The retail side, your units are split up across the state. I said we have 22 Smith stores. We have about anywhere from 2 to 5 members per store. So the units are a lot smaller. So it's harder to convince these people to fight or that's not as dangerous as 75 strike shirts on the factory floor, right? Four bakers doesn't intimidate anybody. And the company knows that. And so they use that against the members. And so that solidarity that I just spoke of, it's even harder to muster up in these smaller units, and because I work in the factory, those guys are a lot more confident knowing that I'm just around the corner, versus the retail side, they don't see me as often, and they start to feel maybe like they're alone, like the union actually isn't there. We do our best, and we show them that we are there, and then the moods change again. But when it comes contract time, that's the hard part, is convincing them all to stand together and
What
fight
can they
for
do?
that.
What can they do? To show solidarity for their contractor.
There's tons of direct action. I'm a huge supporter and a huge fan and advocate of direct action.
Okay. Can you just define what direct action is?
Well, versus written grievances or written complaints or phone calls or anything of that nature. The idea is you don't need a ballot box or somebody to give you permission. You just act on behalf of the unit as a whole. And that could be anything from as large as we did with the strike shirts to a small button on your shirt. And so that's what that's one of our tactics in this upcoming negotiation is buttons. Buttons on the shirt, because at Smiths they do have a dress code and they can't wear the strike shirt, but they can wear a button. So if management sees all 5 bakers wearing a button, then they know this unit is ready to fight. Versus if the manager sees 1 or none, they're not, it's not intimidating when there's only 4 people. But the company knows that behind those 4 people is another 200 bakers. And so, but the bakers don't know that. It's harder to convince them of that.
Andrew, do you have to do the organizing part of this as well? Are you organizing? Are you out there?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we're a smaller local, there's only 2 salaried officers. It's myself and in the financial secretary treasurer. So yeah, I cover a lot of jobs.
So will you go around the state and go into Smiths and Albertsons and?
Absolutely. I never stop organizing. In fact, we just in October we organized a small, very small. It was a low-hanging fruit, but it was huge for me. It's a small Bimbo depot that we had discovered, non-union, and the company was taking our union-made bread, moving it over to the depot and shipping it through non-union hands. And we didn't even know what was happening. It was happening right under our nose.
Here in Albuquerque?
Yep, it's real close to the bakery. It's on Hawkins Street over in the little industrial. It's just tucked away, and I had no idea it even existed.
How did you find it?
You know what? I was playing around on Google one day, looking at Bimbo, and I saw this weird address, and I was like, that's not the factory address. And so I started looking around, and I was like, there's a whole nother location. And so I went down there one night after my shift and just snooping around, and happened to bump into a worker. And so I started talking to him, and they signed cards within days. I mean, it was immediate. I didn't have to do, it was, like I said, it was low-hanging fruit. But all I did was investigate a little bit once I found it. And they've been looking for the union this whole time, it turns out. And so we walked in and organized them without any.
Will that have an effect on the shipping? In terms of shipping through non-union?
Well, no, because I think they were still, the drivers were union, they're Teamsters, but it was just the concept, the idea of our union bread going directly to non-union hands, and they're paying, we have people at our factory doing that exact same work, and they're paying these guys. Those guys took a $2.50 an hour raise upon signing, not to mention dozens of other benefits. Huge, yeah, you change lives, when you do that. And these guys couldn't believe that they got $2.50, $2.50. They couldn't believe that. They thought that was a mistake. And they were doing this exact same work. So the companies, that's why they do that. They're saving a few bucks by going to the non-union hands. Well, now they can't do that. It's all union. But yeah, so I do. I'm constantly organizing when I have a day off. I never stop. First, everywhere I go, I start asking questions. Just tell me about your benefits, just kind of lead and just see where it goes,
How old are you?
I am 35 years old.
Okay. How did you find out in your family that there had been some union folks?
As I got more involved, I asked my mom one day about, I remember my grandfather was he worked for the railroads, and so I just got curious one day, and I asked her if he was in the union. She said, "Oh yeah." I said, a lot of our family is, and she started naming a few people. It turns out I have, uncles and cousins who are AFT members. They're educators, and of course my grandpa. And I even asked her why we didn't talk about it at the dinner table, or why they didn't teach us kids about it. I couldn't imagine. I feel like I missed out on years of opportunity, that I could have been fighting for. But she said, it just wasn't she didn't know why really, but so that's how I found out though, and I wish it would have been talked about more. I think I would have found the union a lot sooner in life had I been more, because I was, you're largely ignorant to it unless you have a reason to know about it, which is part of our problem. I think our message, we're not talking about it enough, but.
How do you see the future of grocery and union in light of technological advances?
Our industry hasn't really been hit by that too much yet on the retail side, but you're right, it's coming rapidly. So I'm not really sure. I know I'm very displeased about automation on any front, which I think everybody is for the most part, because, John Henry beat the steam drill how long ago, and we still are fighting that same battle, I feel like I'm racing the steam drill every day at work. I really do feel that way. Anyway, so the grocery, they've gotten to where, and now you don't even need to pull out your wallet in some of these, like the Apple Store. You just, as you walk through the door, it charges your card and things like that. I mean, they're creating this industry where humans are no longer necessary. Maybe one or two could run the entire place, and that's so. It does look bleak, I'm not really sure how I feel about it, aside from I just know we have to be ready, and we got to keep fighting, and we got to organize. Got to organize until we're blue in the face. That's the only way we're going to survive, and especially in the grocery side like that, because they've already started. You can't. It's even at Smith's, which is a union shop. If you go, after about 8 p.m. or something, you're dealing with the self checkout. You don't even get to talk to a person, which I don't know. I make them get somebody. I'm rude about it, but
You make them get somebody?
I make them get, unless I have a couple of things, but I don't go there for 2 things. I go there to get groceries for the week, so I make them get me a real person.
How do people respond when you do that?
I'm not the only one, I can tell, because they always have somebody ready. There must be several other people who do that, because they do have somebody who's prepared to man that register, but I think they only do that for the people who have big cartful. So, and I just don't like the automated stuff, you know.
Andrew, being in your 30s, many union people that I interview are older, and I just wondered, do you ever talk to your peers about your union work?
I never stop.
Okay, how do they respond to it? I'm curious.
You know, the 30-somethings and the younger, the millennials, have kind of taken the reins on the movement, which is so exciting, because I think we missed a generation. Kind of like I was saying about how my family didn't talk about it at the dinner table. You know, that was the gap. I think our parents let it go a little. They stopped fighting so much, stopped talking about the union so much, and we started disintegrating, you know. And now, like I said, I didn't know I had rights as a worker. I never had a voice. I didn't know you could stand up to your boss. I never knew that was an option. And it is. And it's totally okay to do it, you know, as long as you know how to do it right. So these younger people are learning that too, and they love that. I mean, you know, because until you get into the union, you don't know you have that. You don't know that's an option. And if it is, you probably aren't keeping a job very, very long, you know, if that's an option for you without the union. So they love it. And so, yeah, my peer and people, I have people who have never been interested or involved, who aren't even in a union, who call me or text me and say, hey, how can I organize my shop, you know, and things like that. And so they're listening, they're seeing it, you know. And these are people my age and younger. In fact, our financial secretary, I think he's 26 years old. He served as our vice president after I left the position, and now he's our financial secretary treasurer. Yeah, young guy, 26 years old, and just as passionate as you can be, you know. I wish I was passionate about anything when I was 26, let alone something so important, you know. So the younger people, thank goodness they're paying attention, and they like what they see, and so that's good.
So that's kind of connects in some ways with just my thought of, like, how do you envision the labor movement for the time ahead for us?
You know, I think I feel a couple different ways on this. You know, we are in the movement is in danger. It has slowed down a lot, or it had in recent, but in the past 3 to 10 years, I think we finally woke up and realized that we were on our way out, and we are doing something about that. So it's, you know, involvement is back up. The approval rating of labor in general is back up, or is rising for the first time. It's finally up for the first time in decades. It's at an all-time high right now. So that's so I'm hopeful about the future, because I think because of that, and because of all of the younger generations that are paying attention and seeing it, are I think they understand that they have to keep up with it and stay vigilant and organize in order to keep this alive. And because of that, I feel hopeful. I think the movement has hope of making a strong comeback. You know, I mean, you got people like me. I'm still 35, but I'm still going strong. I don't ever take a break. I eat, sleep, and breathe the movement, you know. And that's how we're going to succeed. So overall, I think I'm hopeful about the history. I think the younger generation realizes the danger now and the importance of it, of keeping it alive, not giving back these rights that we've fought so hard for. So I'm really hopeful about the younger generation and the future of the movement. In fact, even if you look at the New Mexico Federation of Labor, which I serve on that executive board as well, probably half of that board is people my age and younger, even younger than me, which again is important. Like you say, oftentimes, and I know what you're talking about, when I go to these conferences or these union functions, I'm often one of the youngest people there, you know, and so, and that's important, I think, to get those people involved, because not only are they the future, but they are, there's a fire burning there. There really is, you know. So it's good.
I noticed this button that you have on. It says, "Don't mourn, organize."
Yes.
So can
Yes.
you talk about what that means?
Yes, that's a Joe Hill quote. Joe Hill was one of the original Wobblies, the IWW, and he, I don't remember exactly what conversation that he had, but it was something to the effect of, when he, I think he was when he knew he was probably going to get murdered, and he was right. In fact, when he was up on the firing squad, he actually yelled fire on himself, which. That's how I want to go. But yeah, and so he told his brothers and sisters, don't waste any time mourning me. Get out there and organize to prevent this from happening to the rest of us. And that message, I think, still rings true today. Our our organizer, John Price, actually, he says it a different way. He says, don't agonize, organize. Same message. But yeah, it's become a motto of mine. And again, it should be every member's motto. That's organization is survival. That's the bottom line. But that's what that is, and so I'm a huge fan of Joe Hill, of course.
Okay. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up here?
I don't believe so. I think overall, I'm glad that this project exists because it's important to spread this message. And like I said, I think that's part of the union's downfall is that we stopped talking about it. It stopped being dinner conversation. Or when I go out, if I ever go out and have a beer at the brewery, the guy next to me, if he starts talking to me, I'll guarantee I'm going to lead it towards union. And so, but that's how we have to do. We can't ever stop spreading that message because people think the union's gone. They think we're dead, and that's so far from the truth. But it's up to us to remind them of that, in the form of pins, buttons, stickers, whatever you got to do. But let them know that we're here. That's the most important thing, I think. Just remind everybody that the union is here still.
So could you just tell me about the cake?
So, Mother Jones, when she turned 100 for her 100th birthday, her birthday cake was made by a BCTGM member. Back then, we were just still B&C. So it was a union-made cake, and our union logo was iced onto the bottom tier of the cake. And there's a picture of it out there in black and white of her cutting into it. And it's like a 5-tier cake. It's like a small wedding cake almost. But it's union-made by one of our members, one of our bakers. And a little known fact about the BCTGM is we're actually the oldest independent union in existence. We're 133 this year. And so that's how far back we go, is back to Mother Jones. We were there, just like the Wobs. So, interesting piece of history about us.